Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Frightened of change? But what can exist without it? What's closer to nature's heart? Can you take a hot bath and leave the firewood as it was? Eat food without transforming it? Can any vital process take place without something being changed? Can't you see? It's just the same with you, and just as vital to nature." The only thing consistent about the world we live in is change. But it also happens to be one of the hardest things to wrap our heads around. We want consistency. We want predictability. And this innate desire is often at tension with the action we need to take, right? You can't stay the same and evolve. The Stoics often point to our impermanence as an incentive to grow, to live the lives we were meant to live. Because eventually the lights are going to turn off. And the question will be, what will you have done while they were on? I was talking to an entrepreneur recently, working on a new startup just out of college. And I said to him, "It's pretty amazing that you have the courage to do that, to take all those risks, to network, to hustle, to put yourself out there like you are. Be proud of that." As Jordan Peterson says, it's not nothing, right? It's a big deal. And he said, "Thanks, man, I appreciate that, but it's just how I'm wired. Right? This is not difficult for me. It's what I was destined to do. It feels right." And I thought, man, that's special, right? Because for me, and we have very different businesses, but it's like content creation is what comes natural. Writing, right? And all the other stuff can be a battle. It's pushing myself over and over again to do the uncomfortable things that I don't necessarily want to, but know that I need to. And I'm sure he has some version of that too in his own world. Obviously, we all do. It just so happens that the things that are easy for him and natural to him are difficult for me. Right? Some of those things I have to really get myself amped up to do. Right? Like I go speak at a 2-day conference and I love it. The connections, the exchange of wisdom, meeting new people, seeing new faces. But that's some high energy stuff, right? Being quote unquote on for that long. It's a muscle that I've worked pretty hard at. I've really focused on to grow. And when it's done, I have to totally decompress. I go MIA and write about it for a few days afterwards. It's just how I am. But the point I'm trying to make is the ability to do those difficult things came from that understanding that we aren't here forever. There's an impermanence tied to what we do. And to truly capture the beauty of life, we need to dive into that difficulty. There's a lot of, important stuff there. As Joseph Campbell notes, the cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. And sure, change is difficult. It will always be difficult. But it's intertwined, as Marcus Aurelius mentioned, in growth. It's the bridge to everything that is more. It's learning to see staying the same as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Right? The train's gonna go by. We can either hop on or we can watch it fade into the distance as our own clocks tick away. Not to mention, and we've all felt this at some point, there's no better feeling than having stepped into what scared you most and used it as a slingshot to propel you towards the thing that means something to you. It's a beautiful feeling. To revisit that quote, "Frightened of change, well, what can exist without it?" So true. Life is either going to change around you or with you. You can either watch it or step into it. And that's the idea worth holding on to. Don't deprive yourself of the true joy, happiness, satisfaction of knowing you didn't sit back and watch life change from afar. You became an architect of that growth. The train of life is moving. The clocks of life are ticking. And to try and hold on to a moment in time is a fool's errand, right? Ride the now like it's a wave. Use the finitude of our time here as the reminder that in X many years, your time will have expired. And you'll have either climbed the mountain or stayed at its base worried. You'll have either followed your intuition or pushed it away in exchange for a temporary comfort. And maybe that's it. We don't want predictability, we just think we do. We just want to bottle up some consistency amidst a world that's always moving. Right? Not knowing that to move along with the world is the only way to find ourselves, to uncover what we were meant to do with our time and who we were meant to share our time with. At a certain point, the sun's going to set. And you'll have to ask yourself, did you hide in its shadows or did you bask in its light? Let it lead you to new paths with new adventures. Did you make an effort to step onto the stage that it illuminated for you? During your time here, the world changed. Did you? What can you be the best in the world at? Life is a complex place. Complexity sometimes means confusion. It means we forget the big picture. What's our purpose? What are we chasing? What are we bringing to the world? What can you be the best in the world at? It's a little question I try and ask myself every day because I know if I stay close to it, my decision will have far greater impact. There will be more meaning in life. See, it pushes away the things that are appealing in the short term, but really don't take us anywhere in the long term. Because one of the coolest aspects of human nature is our ability to illuminate what matters and, well, mitigate what doesn't. Helps us focus on what's important. We need to go to the grocery store. Well, we step out the front door, paying attention to nothing but the task at hand, not the objects to our left or right. We don't know what colors the cars were that passed us by or the plants we walked by. We don't think about the blood pumping through our bodies, making it all possible as we walk to the car. We don't even see the car as its metallic components as it really is. We see it as our portal to a place that has the food. See, we are blind, but at the same time have this beautiful gift of vision. We see the path right to what's most important. So let's leverage that. And what I think we need to remember is to identify in our own lives what that means with regard to our purpose in the context of what we are becoming. See, every day I hear people talk about followers on social media, right? How do I get attention? How do I get noticed? How do I market myself or my brand to the world? How do I stand out? And every time I hear that, I always have this little internal reaction, like a voice saying, that's just so wrong. It's so backwards. You stand out by adding value to the world, by being good at what you do. It's that simple, really. And so look at it like this. We'll take a specific example. To worry about the marketing and the attention and the followers first is like worrying about the transportation of something you don't have yet or that's incomplete. It's like spending all your time worrying about the logistics of a cargo van and having no idea what that van is going to transport. Isn't the product the most important thing? And that's the question I ask myself when I'm caught up in something flashy or maybe out of line with my big picture. To make sure I'm on track in this crazy world, if social media disappeared tomorrow, are you good enough at what you do that you could take that product or service or skill set to another platform and start again? And if you're not, fine. But are you working towards it? Those are the parameters that we should all live between. Everything else tends to work itself out. Steve Martin's quoted as saying, "Be so good they can't ignore you." And that's what I find so exciting. The opportunity, the chance to build something sustainable. That's why this is a long-term play. And in a world where so much emphasis is put on perception, what's the reality? What's the story? Right? The pictures are great on the surface, but what's the value that resides below that, underneath? What are you working tirelessly day and night to be exceptional at? What are you reading to build yourself up as a force to be reckoned with?
as a powerful, valuable individual. See, my world, a lot of what I do is immersed in social media, which is why it's so important that I remember the perspective that I step out. Social media is not the product. I'm thinking much bigger than that, and I hope you are too, whether it's academics or sports or art. What is your thing? What's going to be your arena? Where are you unstoppable? Where you add so much value that the world has to stop. Where sure, you can capture it on social media, but you can talk about it face to face with clients and family and friends and strangers on the sidewalk. You can write about it, teach about it. Where it's so much a part of you that the phrase competent doesn't even do it justice. That's where greatness lives. Not in screaming for attention or creating a facade. Those things don't stand the test of time. I'm talking about being truly remarkable. And we all have that ability. We're all capable of mastery in some area, moving towards something that matters. We just have to make the choice to own it, to see the world and all its opportunity for what it is, to begin. And what better a time than now?
You can salvage the day. You can salvage the week, the month, the year, the years. All is not lost. It's never lost. The trap is looking back and using what happened to define what will happen. Using what's behind you to map what's in front of you. What brought this to mind? Well, personal note, this has happened before. Today was not a good one. At least not until now. Not from a productivity standpoint. I just got back from Europe, a little jet lagged. I've never had more to do, but simultaneously done so little with my time, which is frustrating. But I'm going to the gym in an hour, and that leaves me 60 minutes to salvage what could easily have been looked back upon as a lost day. See, something that I think is beautiful about life is that you can get countless things wrong. You're afforded substantial room for error. And it's often, you only need to get one thing right. Like take dating, right? Countless wrong relationships. You only need one to work out, right? Entrepreneurship, ton of mistakes, lots of swings and misses. That's built into the process, but the one win can change everything. Or these stories, these ideas I share on social media, right? A lot of them totally miss. They resonate with me and, sometimes me alone. But if one resonates with others, one gains traction, there's a lot of impact to be had there. And so I wanted to share this because it's a slightly different angle to what I've talked about before. Of course, this has elements of, you don't feel like it, well, do it anyway, right? David Goggins would have an aneurysm hearing that I even contemplated not writing today. But here's the thing. It's very easy to group a period of time together and call it a loss. It didn't happen today, it might tomorrow, right? It's easy to look back on what you were and use it to build walls around yourself, to say it's what you are now, when in reality, there is still value to be squeezed out. Just because what existed before now was antithetical to everything you wanted it to be, well, that doesn't mean there's no win buried in there. It doesn't mean between 4:45 and 5:45 here today, I can't share something that's important to me that might help other people identify and dive into something that's important to them, right? All is not lost if time remains. It's a message that, sure, it might be psychologically easier to walk away from the day because the first half wasn't good, but that's not the move. There contains somewhere in there the seed that will grow, or at least begin the process of growing what you need. Jim Quick, he recently said, some days all you have is 40%. And on those days, giving 40% is 100%. Maybe seeing that subconsciously saved my day today. I don't know, but it's very easy to check out when the past was not what you wanted it to be. Instead of thinking, yeah, but one right move right now changes everything, changes the momentum, alters the personal identity. You're always one move, one decision away from reigniting momentum. A quote-unquote bad day can be completely mitigated with one incredible decision or action. So let's pull this up a level. Where does it bring us? It brings us to those moments we're sitting in bed, wishing things were a little different, went a little differently, or looking in the mirror, disappointed in the day. And instead of letting it define the story in totality, remembering that there's something there. Maybe just one thing, one action, one decision, one move you can take to salvage what remains. There's some value you can find that will reposition your outlook on what has occurred. There is no loss here, only the win that hasn't happened yet. You weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, to exist beyond the sun's grasp, to stay on the outside, looking in. No, you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life. It's important to remember the difference between now and forever, the distinction between today and tomorrow, because from time to time they look deceptively similar. Especially when we inevitably find ourselves in the darkest of times. When despite our best efforts, our world is reduced to shadows, void of hope. When tomorrow and today have merged into one endless entity, it always seems to be in these times that we forget that right now is just a moment, not an assigned permanence, but a bridge to something great. As Viktor Frankl says, if there is meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in suffering. We all suffer, we all hurt, we all go through periods of time where we can't see or hear or feel anything beyond the darkness we find ourselves in, but it's there. Darkness cannot be defined without light. It's in the definition. Darkness is a partial or total absence of light. They need each other, darkness and light. The one thing that can bring darkness to its knees is out there, everywhere, all around it. And if there was ever a reason to be hopeful, enthusiastic, if there's ever a reason to believe, it's that a new life is always a light switch away. It's that darkness is as temporary as the day. And the antidote requires only that you believe it to be true. Only that you find the resolve to reach one foot out, to remind yourself of the sun's warmth and the infinite beauty of a world beyond this temporary darkness, because you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, but to reemerge like a rocket through the Earth's stratosphere, to swing from star to star like life is a playground and you make the rules. And I think when we look back, we'll be nothing but grateful for those times of darkness. They, in a sense, prepared us for the road ahead by giving us what we need most: perspective,
life lessons, a roadmap to follow. Because you don't appreciate the light, the sun, the clear blue skies, the wind on your face, the sound of the waves, the chirping of the birds. No, you don't see the beauty in any of that until, even if for a moment, it is taken away. You don't learn about life's abundance until you come face to face with scarcity. You don't learn to give until you've had your world taken away. You don't learn to love until you've experienced heartbreak. You don't learn courage until you've been overcome by fear. You don't learn to grow until you've been truly stuck. You don't learn to believe until you've looked in the mirror and doubt peers back. You don't know who you are until you learn what you're not. See, everyone finds themselves having wandered into the dark, sometimes of their own volition, sometimes of fate. But like leaves changing color in the fall, the earth on its journey around the sun, a wave emerging and falling back into that which it came, it is not an end, but a beginning. Life's way of preparing us for what's to come, introducing us to the infinite possibility of tomorrow, because you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, but to emerge from them, to light up the world. No, you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life. I went on a run yesterday. My mind, as it often does, began to wander. Reflecting back on all the streets I've jogged down over the last 10 years, all over the country, up north in Canada, down in Mexico, across the Atlantic, as long as my body would allow me, I was running. You could say it's become over time something of a spiritual occurrence for me. So as I made my way down A1A, I asked myself, why? Why has it meant, and why does it continue to mean so much to me, this sort of arbitrary activity or exercise? And not only that, particularly during the times where everything else in life feels so unsteady, when there's chaos and turbulence all around me. Well, this is the conclusion that I came to. It was the clarity. It was the simplicity that continued to pull me in and keep me going. See, when I was running, I always knew what I had to do. And there was calm in that, reassurance. Perhaps most importantly, a purpose. Looking back at those days where it's 94 in Miami in August, the sun's coming down, I'm suffering through the run. Or days where I'm running through storms, thunder, cracking all around me, my heart racing because I know it's kind of dangerous to be there, but what am I going to do? I have to keep going. Those days up in New England in the Northeast, right, in the winter, that first mile where you step outside and the wind sort of cuts through you, you feel it in your bones. All that's uncomfortable. But problems, they seem manageable when you know where you're going. When you understand the rules of the game. And the rules of the game, every time I laced up my shoes, they were simple. You start at one point and you don't stop until you arrive at the other specified point. It placed stability into an ever-evolving landscape. It reminded me, during the most difficult times, what it was like to be in full control. And I'm going to say something that may appear drastic here,
I'm sure many of you know that saying, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, attributed to everyone from Lincoln to Da Vinci to your next door neighbor. Well, I believe that simplicity saved my life. And I think it did many times. It's been a very up and down journey, as they all are, right? And growth is injecting yourself into a world you don't understand. It has to be, definitionally. It's being oversaturated with options. The road less traveled is paved in distraction. And when my purpose and my path felt like they were deteriorating before my very eyes, when my understanding of life felt like it was slipping away, which is a pain pretty different than stubbing your toe, right? It feels much bigger, it's much scarier. It was faith in my ability to slay the dragon and find the treasure that empowered me. It was the thing that reminded me, when I break things down into little objectives, not only do you conquer them, but you identify as someone who conquers them, right? It's peeling back the layers of complexity that reminded me, amidst the clutter and the noise, there's simplicity in what I was meant to do. The shiny objects need not divert my attention. We just need to take the time to identify our finish lines, and they can change. What matters sometimes does. But the moral of the story is you can't live life trying to hit targets in the dark. And it just makes sense, right? Issues with the project I'm working on, go for a run. Feeling confused, frustrated, go for a run. Argument with the girlfriend, go for a run. Run, right? And I'd come back with less in my head than I left with, which would, funny enough, ultimately be more than I left with, right? The space to think about what matters. The simplicity of starting points and ending points. Nothing in life is that complicated. It's not. But we have a tendency amidst life's storms to stop running. During the heat waves, we forget why we're there. We lose that simplicity. We lose our purpose and our meaning because we let the unimportant things become the big things. And I think that's what running is. A reminder that, when life is simple, we understand where we're going. Simplicity isn't convenience, it's what keeps your heart beating and your eyes open. It is life. It's waking up, knowing what matters to you so that you can push away the things that don't. It's that reassurance that, there's a world of infinity outside the window, but what makes you brilliant is that you can identify and latch on to a small few things. The world around us often says, we need to use the whole canvas. But I say there's nothing wrong with identifying your favorite color and going from there. I say identifying your destination and moving towards it wholeheartedly with conviction is a superpower. And it doesn't mean we don't stop along the way. It doesn't mean nature won't push us off course from time to time. But for one who's taken the time to identify for themselves a finish line, they are never truly lost, even during the most trying of times, because all that's required is a repointing of the compass. I will continue to run for as long as I can, because the further one moves into that abyss, the more life says, look over here. A is important. No, B is what you need. You'll never succeed without me or him or them. This way, that way. Some in-between way is the right way. But no, all that is distraction. It makes you feel small very quickly and will make you feel unsure and ill-equipped just as fast. In my mind, the beauty in life is taking all that supposed complexity and finding within it what's required to paint our own masterpieces, to run our own races. Life is a run around the Charles. a run down the Hollywood boardwalk, a run to the Dania Beach pier. It's knowing where your heart needs to go and following it there. It's saying yes when required and no when required, but understanding you are the one who decides what required means. Beauty is simple. Contentment is simple. Meaning is simple. And we can always access those things. They're buried under the complexity we spend our day-to-day swimming in. So, neighbor, here's to the ultimate sophistication. To getting more than you've ever had in your life by building your own parameters out of less. Remember the little things. The ones we all come to appreciate perhaps a little too late. That feeling of comfort our little eyes first understood to be home. Those little conversations we still think about, the ones that shaped us. Those little stretches of time we thought would last forever, but to our surprise, had a final moment written into the story. Oh, those little things. I remember going to a concert in high school. It was at the Orpheum in Boston, Massachusetts. I went with two of my friends. Had an amazing time, and well, years and years have obviously passed, and recently I asked myself, what is it I remember about that day? Why is it such a powerful moment for me? And interestingly enough, I don't remember any of the songs that were sung or how well they were played. I don't remember what I bought or what I wore or what teenage troubles I was going through at the time. No, years later, I remember how it felt to stand there in the center of that theater. Color of the lights filling up the room, the bass drum resonating in my chest, aligning with my heartbeat, the people I was with. And the funny thing is, 17-year-old me had no clue he was driving into the city for a night he'd remember forever, but not because of the music. No, because of a feeling. Because he would spend the time with the same people he would have hung out with anyway at home. And perhaps subconsciously I knew, perhaps we all do, but at the time, it all felt like details. At the time, they were simply included in the story, a buy one, get one, if you will. Oh, how they hide themselves, those little things. In a way, it's not too different from the oxygen we breathe in and breathe out, intertwined in everyday life. Necessary to carry on, to grow, to evolve, yet only missed when it's gone. We don't think about the air we breathe unless, of course, we are submerged and without it. So why does this matter? Why put this thought to paper? Well, because to use my previous concert hall metaphor, I've spent so much of my life thinking about the stage presence, the accuracy of the notes, the visual appearances, the wrong things. It seemed intuitive, overwhelmingly obvious, but now they're just reminders. How easily we can walk on what matters to get our hands on what doesn't. Do we know what's important? Do we know what we hold dear? Do we think enough about those little things? Every time the caller ID says mom or dad or nana banana, when my little brother and sister get new apartments, jobs, promotions, start navigating this crazy world, every time I open my laptop and get to bleed my thoughts onto a blank page over a cup of coffee and a sunrise, running around random towns across this country with my best friends, bringing ideas to life,
See, the now tells you they are nice things, happy things, lovely things. But it doesn't let you in on the greatest secret of all. Those little things just might be everything. So see them while you're in them and hold on tight.
Courage takes many shapes. Sometimes courage is slaying the dragon, and sometimes it's merely picking up the sword and seeing yourself worthy of swinging it. Sometimes courage is running, sometimes it's walking, sometimes it's crawling. And as we navigate life's seasons and oscillating chapters, as we transform, so does courage, right alongside us. It's relative. And understanding that can not only change your life, it can save your life. I recently got in touch with an old buddy of mine from childhood, hadn't talked to in years at this point. And he's been going through a rough time, a series of unfortunate events, and because of that, fallen into a bad place. And he's just a top-tier dude, huge personality, lights up every single room he walks into. And pretty quickly as we're talking, I could tell that it hurt him to walk me through, where he was and what he was going through. Almost as though there'd be some sort of judgment on my end. But see, here's the thing. No one is immune to succumbing from time to time to life's misfortune. That's just a reality. At any point in time, every single soul walking this planet is a few bad decisions away from rock bottom, just like they are a few good decisions away from the clarity and positive transformation and growth they've been looking for. And knowing that that's a fine line, to me, that's empowerment. Because it reminds us during the bad times we are, a few decisions away from climbing out. And during those good times that we're not infallible, that nothing should be taken for granted. No one is above misfortune. You're not less than for walking through your personal hell. It's merely your turn to find courage within yourself and rise above it. Now, that's exactly what he's doing, and this is ultimately my point. He's getting help. Hurt pride, hurt ego, angry at himself. He's rising above all of that to get help for the betterment of himself, his family, and his family's future. To me, it does not get more courageous than that. It's a courage I'm not even sure I fully can comprehend. And I get it, right? You're in the middle of the chaos. You don't see it. We never see clearly in the middle. Because it feels like he's digging himself out of a hole, so he doesn't see the magnitude of his decision. But given the season he's currently in, he is making himself the hero. And there will be a point a few years from now when, sure, courage will look different. Because what life asks of him at that point will be different. But we have to understand the moment. What's more courageous than saying, I don't want this anymore, I'm going to fix it, and taking a step towards that? And that's what we need to understand. I witnessed this firsthand. especially in the personal development world. I love consuming personal development on YouTube and podcasts and books and everywhere. And what I find is the message I need ebbs and flows depending on the season I'm in. Right? There are times, particularly in the first couple of years of starting this business, where I'd need the Gary V's and Eric Thomases of the world every day to say, dude, get off your ass and do more. Stop hiding behind your excuses. Be better, right? And there are still days where I need exactly that. In those moments, courage for me meant overcoming the desire to cling to short-term fulfillment. Courage was doing what I needed to do, not what I wanted to do. Then there are times where, I'm fighting through something deeper, something personal. And courage looks a lot different. It's not go write 2 speeches and run 10 miles, go be better and do more. No, not that day. Those days, it's look in the mirror and remind yourself that what you do matters and that you are worthy. Courage is picking up the sword. It's when I dive into the philosophical. It's Eckhart Tolle explaining the power of being present. Jordan Peterson shedding light on what one's pursuit of meaning truly entails. Courage is recapturing my why, pushing through the fears and insecurities and feeling again like the person who can. And so the bottom line is, as I evolve, as I change, as life ebbs and flows, courage changes with me. And sometimes the smaller action in a particular situation is much more powerful, much more meaningful than a big action taken when, things are going well and the stars are aligned and life is smooth. Perfect example, something that almost always chokes me up, and I'm not exaggerating, seeing someone who's overweight and you can kind of tell they're struggling through jogging on the side of the road, right? Because I know how insanely hard that is to begin a journey of that magnitude. To look at one's life and say, hey, I'm changing the situation, right? To lace up your shoes and suffer through a run outside or even a walk outside. Think about how powerful that statement, how much it took, how much fear and insecurity was pushed aside in the pursuit of something better. Now imagine what would be missed. Imagine what a loss if they didn't celebrate that victory, their strength in stepping outside that day. Why? Well, because their neighbor ran 10 miles, they only ran 1. But that's the thing about courage. It doesn't look the same. Who cares what the neighbor did? Do you understand what just happened? His courage to push through a 10-mile run is astronomically different than your courage to shift your identity, to transform into someone who runs. Again, there will be a point in time when what courage means for you changes, but understand the now. Celebrate this in how remarkable your action in this moment. And I hope I'm able to communicate the variance there, right? Like sometimes courage is finding a way through, the fire in your lungs and pain in your legs to get your split from 6 minutes a mile to 5 minutes and 45 seconds. And that's amazing. Sometimes courage is getting out of bed. It depends on where you are and what life is giving you. And I promise you, it's not an excuse to do less. Everyone wants to grow in some capacity. I know I sure do. This isn't a cop-out, and I don't think anyone listening wants to be patted on the head and told, hey, you're wonderful just the way you are. Don't change. No, the meaning is in the evolution. What I'm saying is, I've seen in others, some close to me, and I've certainly experienced in myself that misunderstanding what courage means in a given moment ends up hurting more than it helps. It creates and highlights a gap where a gain should be. Courage has many shapes. It will transform around you all your life. So take the time to understand where you are. Take the time to explore what the next steps look like. And give yourself grace, give yourself appreciation for taking the required steps. Courage is not measured by what you want to do 3 years from now. It's not measured by what your neighbor's doing. It's not measured by 40 steps down the road. Courage is finding it within yourself to do the most important thing in your life now. Imagine with me a world where you stopped segmenting out the difficulty in your life as other than, where you stopped seeing the turbulence as an obstacle to your journey. Imagine with me life as a symphony, where everything works together to create the whole, where the high notes, the low notes, the pauses, the rests, the tempo changes, all contribute to the overall theme. None of it's unimportant or dismissible. How could it be? Without the low notes, the high notes don't mean anything. Without the rests, you don't get the satisfaction and the power of the moment that music re-emerges. In fact, it was the contrast that created the magic to begin with. All of it is needed, even when you don't understand why. You don't know that this slow beginning, the breaks, the tempo changes, that it will all be the reason you are soon awed by the crescendo that awaits. And how could you? It's one flow. The journey points in one direction. You are in this for the ride. See, in our lives, the obstacles, the chaos, the confusion, they hurt. They're unsettling, so the inclination is to dismiss them, to push them away. This isn't what I need. This is void of value, so get rid of it, we tell ourselves. When in reality, those things are integral components to your song. They are what culminate into your final piece. They're bringing you to that crescendo. Doesn't mean you have to love the challenging times, of course not. But it does mean we should understand that even though we can't see it unfolding before our very eyes, it's all playing a role. My hurt made me stronger. My struggle injected meaning into my life. It made the song richer, the sound sweeter. Today is what it is because yesterday was what it was. And I know when I'm face to face with something that my gut instinct deems to be detrimental, that two things can in fact be true at once. That I need to work to right the ship, to repoint the compass, but also understand that the storm wasn't void of significance. The valley wasn't all for naught. It's gifted me new oceans to cross, new mountains to climb, and new perspective as I peer out over the view. So as you move through the dark, as you navigate the chaos of night, know that the light you're chasing is only meaningful because of the depths you are emerging from. Life beyond these shadows is not where the world begins. It's a continuation of an already beautiful journey you're on. It's your symphony in totality. See, the time will come when you'll look back and you'll be grateful for the so-called inconveniences that surround you now. Your heart needs the contrast that this adversity creates. Your soul depends on the hardship to understand the magnificence of life. It's why now, when it hurts, you must keep going. You have to keep going. You have to let the notes materialize into the beautiful song it will become. The masterpiece it was meant to become. Of all life's lessons, it's my relationship with what it means to suffer that's transformed my reality. Something that's learned, not unlike one's ability to read or write. An understanding that unlocks the door to fulfillment. Nietzsche says, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. Dostoevsky says pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and deep heart. The really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth. Helen Keller says, although the world is full of suffering, it's also full of the overcoming of it. Our problem is not that we suffer. Our problem is that we don't know how to perceive it when it inevitably arrives. We're taught that it's synonymous with a giant street sign saying wrong way. We're taught that the perfect life is free of its grasp. It's why when suffering does arrive, we're so inclined to run from it. I reference my experience as a D1 rower often, not because I stood out or even really because of my love for the sport. I reference it because it is the point in my life when I learned to suffer. When I learned what I could put my body through, my mind through, and see that like all things, discomfort simply ends, and life is different on the other side. That's why I talk about waking up to go to the gym in the morning when it's still dark in the middle of winter, the practices that made me throw up, having 3 exams, 2 papers, but thinking about a 2K test. Because part of me couldn't believe I was doing it, because up until that point in my life, I would have simply said no. That's why I reference the 3 of us walk-ons that were there senior year out of the 60 plus that showed up freshman year. We built a relationship with suffering. You understand what opens up to you when you agree to, for a moment in time, walk through those flames of hell. It's not a trick or a complex formula. It's just taking yourself to places most haven't learned to go. Not because they can't, but because they haven't learned. When you know you can push yourself far beyond what you thought possible, not only survive, but come back renewed, re-energized, a different understanding of the world. It's hard to see anything as too much or outside the realm of possibility. In my personal life, I can make difficult decisions. In my professional life, I can sit down and write when I don't want to. When I feel like I can't, I can take on projects that scare me, that take me so far outside my comfort zone, my ceilings have no choice but to become floors. You elevate yourself with each yes. Gustave Lanson says, there is no art without commitment and suffering. That is not a demon to be avoided. It's truly the beginning of everything. Jocko, he says, discipline equals freedom. Well, what is discipline? If not one's ability to accept and harness suffering, to teach yourself not to step back, but forward into it, into the chaos, into the disarray. That's where our lives are assembled. It's where we are made. And so my message is where you would once say no, dare to say yes. Even if it's a footstep, a moment, one toe in the water, teach yourself that the very discomfort you've been running away from, that most run away from, will be the reason your life transforms. Change isn't a miracle. It's a decision.